Hi, everybody. Welcome to Paul Young Podcast. Our episode today of Restoring the Shack is number 3 of 20. It's very important. It's called simply Kim. My name is Paul Young, and I'm the author of The Shack. I want to invite you on an adventure with me and with the book. A lot of you have read it. You have questions. Some of you have just heard about it, and you have questions. This is a book that allows us to explore relationship with the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Questions that we have about hurt and loss and grief. Questions about wonder and beauty and joy. What does it mean to live a life of faith? What do we do about death? Why do tragic things happen to us? These are the questions that we want to explore. And I would love you to come with me. This is an invitation. There are many things in the shack that are not what they appear to be. For example, the foreword is written by Willie, and people assume that that's me. My name is William Paul Young. But nobody knew me as William. My family, my friends, they've always called me Paul. I'm one of 4 generations of Williams, none of who go by William. And when I first wrote the manuscript, it was sort of a joke. Written by Mackenzie Allen Phillips with William P. Young. I built the persona of Willie from Kim's dad. Lived with us for 17 years. His name's Willard. We all called him Willie. I want to read you a little section of the foreword, and you'll see the tongue-in-cheek element of this. Because Willie, he actually wasn't a writer, but I used him as sort of an experiment in literature. And a lot of people thought that Willie was a real person who wrote this book. It says this: although he communicates well enough verbally, Mac is not comfortable about his writing skills, something that he knows I'm passionate about. So he asked if I would ghostwrite this story, his story, for the kids and for Nan. He wanted a narrative to help him express to them not only the depths of his love, but also to help them understand what was going on in his inside world. You know that place where there is just you alone and maybe God, if you believe in him. Of course, God might be there even if you don't believe in him. That would be just like him. He hasn't been called the Grand Interferer for nothing. The Grand Interferer, that's a C.S. Lewis term. A God who is not content to sit back and let us continue in our misery and our lostness and our suffering and our darkness and our blindness, but dives in with us and joins us in the middle of this, even though we can't perceive his presence. Last time I told you about my great sadnesses, my relationship with my dad, the sexual abuse in my life as a child, and the issue of belonging. But I'm an adapter, and I'm a performer, and I performed well. I never thought that it was because I was actually smart and creative that I was successful. I thought I fooled people. Nobody knew about my history. Nobody knew about my addictions. Nobody knew my secrets. I got hired by a big church to work with college kids and to work with 20s to 30-year-olds. And we sort of became the going thing in Portland. I was successful on the outside and a wasteland on the in. One night, in walks these 3 girls. One of them is Kim. and she's with 2 of her 5 sisters. And I'd never seen her before. In fact, it was the first time she'd ever come. So I immediately change what we're planning to do so that we can break up into groups of 2 and pray for each other. Power corrupts. But that's how I met Kim. We became friends. And a few months later, I think I hear God speak to me, marry Kim. I think that's a good idea. But we haven't even really dated, so I'm trying to figure out how to ask her. Now, I didn't know how to love anybody. It's too broken on the inside. But I hear that I should marry Kim. So I figure out this great idea to ask her to marry me. And so I plan a party when we get back from this trip, and I invite a whole bunch of my friends, and I write these beautiful cards for each one of them, and we sit in a circle, about 15 of us, and the rule was you had to read the card out loud before you read the card. And Kim's I palmed to the bottom because hers just said, "Will you marry me?" Yeah, men can be really stupid. But I figure it would be safer in a group setting. So we go through all of this, and Kim opens up her card and she says, "Will you And if she was standing right here, right now, she would tell you that what went through her mind in that moment was, if I say no, he will never ask me again. But if I say yes, I can back out. You gotta love this woman. We were married 11 days later. Kim saved my life. But I drug everything right into our marriage. My addictions, which she didn't know about, my history, which she didn't know about, my secrets, which she didn't know about, and I didn't let her in. 6 weeks into our marriage, I went on a hunting trip with a bunch of guys, and I came back and Kim asked me this question: "Did you miss me?" Now, I was trying to do the right thing. I'd go through these cycles where I would recommit myself back to the arduous activity of righteousness, of performing rightly. And I was in one of those cycles where I was trying to be honest and authentic. And I told her the truth. No. I said, "Kim, I would love to tell you that I missed you. I don't have a misser. I don't have a misser. I can't ever remember missing anyone. If I had a misser, then maybe I'd miss you, but I don't know how to do that." It was devastating for her. We stumbled our way through the first year. All of us come with a house on the inside that people helped us build. Some of us, we bring a shack. And then we can't help but involve other people in our losses. It seems safer to fake our way and keep trying. But if at some point we don't go back in the shack and let somebody in there, we're just going to keep puking our poison on everyone that's around us, especially the people that we love the most. Loneliness was a dominant part of my emotional world, a big chunk of my life. Partly because I never let anybody in. A lot of that was because I didn't trust anybody. And I had separated my head from my heart because my heart was so broken. And I lived from my head. So I knew how to turn a conversation back on somebody. I knew how to make it their fault. And I constantly pushed people away. And I felt it. the sense of loneliness. I remember as a student in Bible school, was in the middle of the prairies in Canada, and I would go at night and walk along the railway tracks. The wind would howl, and I knew it was loud enough that nobody could hear me scream. And I'd scream and scream and scream. And then I'd gather up everything, and I'd put on my facade, and I'd walk back to school and be the smart, witty, religious Christian boy. Broken heart, separation of the head from the heart. God's not intent to leave us in that state. But God's intent is not to punish us either. Punishment is not justice. Punishment doesn't change anything. In the long run, we know it doesn't. It surely doesn't restore what was broken. God's intent is to heal us, even though it is as through fire. We need the activity of fire to expose our hearts and heal us. Fire is restorative. Fire purifies. God is a consuming fire. There are some dates in our lives that will always stand out. And January 4th, 1994 is one of those significant dates for me. I got a one-sentence phone call from Kim. I'm waiting for you at your office. And I know. What Kim knew was I was in a 3-month affair with one of her best friends. At that point, I had to make a decision. Do I face my wife or do I run? The way to run away at that point was suicide. That was the decision that I had to make. And for some of us, suicide is the very last way to run away. It's a way to avoid hitting the bottom. I even, to this day, don't know how I made it across the town, and I walked in to face the fury of my wife. I tell people that I married the wrath of God. Thankfully, I believe the wrath of God is also the love of God. It is the fire that is so furious at things that are wrong that it has the power to start to burn away all the crap. There is nothing that justifies adultery. And in my mind, I had to try to justify my behavior. Remember, I had a facade of performance out here, and I was involved in an activity that was absolutely devastating. And so I began to think that maybe Kim was going to die, and that maybe this was the love that would finally show the world what love was really like. You know, it was a form of insanity, as adultery has to be. If I had any love for this other woman, I would have never done this. If I had any love for Kim in this situation, I would have never done this. There's no justification here. And part of the process of us coming to any sense of healing is that we have to own our stuff. And I was at a place in my life where if I couldn't own it and I couldn't find some way to change, then suicide was the good option. After about the first 4 hours, I said to Kim, if we're going to do this, I need to tell you every secret that I have, because secrets have been killing me my whole life. And naively, Kim says, bring it on. At the end of 4 days, Kim was absolutely destroyed. And she said to me,
I will never believe another word that comes out of your mouth the rest of your life. And I believed her. Why should she? Everything she thought was real and legitimate had absolutely been shattered. And it's true. I'd hit the bottom. And there's a lot of things that look like hitting the bottom. Suicide looks like hitting the bottom. But a lot of times it's a way to avoid hitting the bottom. When you hit the bottom, you stop pointing fingers at anybody or anything. I didn't point fingers at my abuse. I didn't point fingers at the way I grew up. I didn't point fingers at her. It didn't even cross my mind because I'd hit the bottom. When you hit the bottom, for many of us, it's the first time in our lives that there might be a place to finally stand. But it's a devastatingly hard place to be.
Mackenzie's weekend that he spends in the shack represents 11 years. 11 years for Kim and I to heal. The book's very autobiographical. I don't know if a writer can write fiction without putting himself in it. But this one, I'm Mac. Let me read you something from the foreword of the shack. Mac has been married to Nan for just more than 33 mostly happy years. He says she saved his life and paid a high price for it. For some reason beyond understanding, she seems to love him more now than ever, even though I get the sense that he hurt her something fierce in the early years. I suppose that since most of our hurts come through relationships, so will our healing. And I know that grace rarely makes sense for those looking from the outside. Now you know the story behind the story.
Another sign that you've hit the bottom, you stop trying to manipulate the world around you. And one of the ways that I let go of control was I called up complete strangers. And for the first time in my life, I considered counseling. And I made an appointment and I walked in, and Byron, who is my friend to this day, did the intake, and he says, you know, I think I know the right guy for you. And he introduced me to a man who became my friend, Scott Mitchell. And I sat in front of Scott and I said, Scott, my life is over. And for the first time in my entire history, I said these 4 words: can you help me? And I said, I don't need somebody who asks me how I feel about this. I need somebody who can tell me they know how to get me from A to Z. Because if I can't find some kind of change, I'm done. Can you help me? And Scott, he smiles and he says, yes, but it's going to take 1.5 years. I said, I'm in. He said, yeah, right. I said, Scott, I don't even trust myself to know when I'm done, so I am not leaving until you tell me I'm done. I put myself in a position where finally the possibility of trust was an only option for me. And I was saying, I'm done trying to figure this out myself and manipulate my way to healing. And so I took one step, one day at a time, one moment at a time, and I worked. Part of the devastation of sexual abuse is that it absolutely destroys your inside boundaries. And when you ran into somebody that also didn't have boundaries, it was very dangerous. But Scott and I had been working on something, and suddenly, for the first time in my life, I felt a boundary on the inside, something inside of me that could say, no. And I call Kim up, and I'm bawling like a baby, and I'm saying, Kim, I have a boundary on the inside of me. And she says, yeah, right, whatever. And that was okay. I'm the perpetrator here. I don't have the right to place on her a timeline for her healing. I have no right to demand reconciliation or even forgiveness. Forgiveness would be part of reconciliation, but for her, it's going to be between her and God. I got nothing I can do at this point. It took Kim and I 11 years to heal. And I never thought it would ever happen. That 11 years is represented by the weekend that Mackenzie spends in the shack. Inside of all of his damage, where I meet the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, who begin to unravel all the lies that I have believed about God, about myself, about the world, and tear down all the dry rot and all the poisons that are inside the shack, my own soul and heart that is so broken, and begin to rebuild it. I had to go back to the shack. You know what I had to find out? That God never loved the facade at all. That he always loved the shack, complete with its devastation, complete with its shame, complete with its guilt, complete with its sense of self-hatred and loathing. But it was me. It was my heart. It was my soul. And God was in love with me. And not with all this religious stuff that I had tried to present to him and to the world. It's inside my own shack that I found out that I am pursued and have always been embraced by relentless affection, the kindness and the grace of God. That is our only hope in Jesus.
So often we're waiting for someone else to change before we're willing to take the steps to change ourselves. So what are you waiting for? Think about it. Is it time? I mean, have you just given in? Are you thinking that nothing's ever going to change? You can. Don't give in. In the words of the music band Joseph, don't give in. I'd rather be dead than live a lie. Burn the white flag.